Welcome again, everybody. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I'm trying to go to the first slide, but I don't know why I can see the first slide. It comes with Alana, like our subject matter expert. Anyway, so let me introduce um, our subject matter expert today, Alana Carter, and our topic today is fostering online community. So before going to the session, let me introduce Alana. Alana, can you unmute and say hi to everybody?
Yes, hi, hello everybody. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you so much. I don't know, where did it go? It was working pretty well.
Ume, stop sharing your screen and start all over again. That might help.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm sharing it again. I don't know, it was working. Right now it's not working. I don't know what happened. Why it is blank?
Okay, no worries, Ume. I can share it for you. Just give me 2 seconds, everyone, okay?
Sure. Should I try again? Or you are doing Colin? Share screen. Yes.
So while we are waiting, if you haven't shared where you are joining us this evening, please do so. We'd like to know where you are joining us.
Okay, Ume, you're good to go. You can see now, right?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, go ahead.
So our topic, as I mentioned, fostering community in online space. And can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so it's Alana. I'm introducing Alana to you. Alana Carter teaches in various language programs, including at Ryerson University and the University of Toronto. And she also works as an educational developer at McMaster University. She holds a Master of Education in Curriculum and Instruction, and she is working towards a certificate in instructional design. Alana has worked on curriculum development projects for various stakeholders and is committed to developing inclusive learning environments. Alana publishes and presents regularly on cultural acceptance and support in the academic environment and strategies for providing high quality and accessible educational opportunities for all learners. She is excited by the opportunities that virtual and online learning contexts offer. So this is her short bio. Online, everything, anytime can go wrong since my screen share isn't working. Anyway, so we have introductory question and then we have discussion questions. So our first introductory question to Alana is, what are some challenges you have experienced in online learning environments? We have just seen once. So yeah, over to you, Alana.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the introduction. It's very nice to meet everybody. Thank you for inviting me to attend. And I'm very excited to talk about this topic. And when I think about challenges in online learning environments, I was thinking about this a little bit this afternoon, and I made a list, and the list is long. There are many challenges to online learning environments. Of course, we've just had an example of technical glitches. They happen. And there's, it is what it is. Technical glitches happen, and they're a reality for instructors, they're a reality for our students as well. And I think it's just really important to be patient and understand that everybody's doing the best that they can. But when I think about my own students in particular, some of the challenges that I've experienced are time zones. And the fact that my students, who used to all be located in the same city, are now literally in countries around the world, sometimes on completely the opposite side of the world as me. And so time zones has been a really big issue, and something that I'm sure we've all had to navigate. Technical issues, as we just said, or glitches that happen, they are a reality. Internet quality, right? Some of our students, depending on where they are in the world, have access to better internet or worse internet, depending on things like this. And when we think about internet quality, we can also think about access, and the fact that some of our students in some parts of the world may not have access to the same tools that we have here in Canada. Also issues around engagement. At the beginning, I think maybe our students might be getting more comfortable with, the whole Zoom classroom or being online, and they're starting to figure out ways that they can appropriately engage. But of course, there are still issues of engagement, because sometimes our students are shy, they don't want to turn their cameras on, they feel nervous to speak, because it's not the same as a face-to-face classroom. It's not to say that it's better or worse what we're doing in our virtual classrooms, it's just not the same. And so everybody, instructors and students, have all kind of had to learn how to navigate these online worlds and how to socialize in these online worlds. So there's been this whole learning curve. And then when I think a little bit more about this, I also think about fatigue, right? People get tired of being on computers for very long periods of times. And if I think physically about my own body, it can be back pain and neck pain from sitting looking at the computer for so long. And I think it's really important for us as instructors to remember that it's not just us that's experiencing these things. Our students are experiencing them as well. And then, of course, we have all these new distractions. We always had distractions in the classroom, but when our students are at home and they're learning in their own houses, there's different distractions. Some of our students have families, have kids, have the TV on in the background. There's different kinds of noises. Somebody's ringing the doorbell. And these are all different kinds of distractions that we've had to learn how to navigate and think about. And hopefully in the last 18 months, we've made some really good steps. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about these with some of the later questions. But these are kind of some of the main ideas that popped into my head when I started to think about challenges in the online environment.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you have mentioned pretty much all the, issues that we face regularly while doing online classes. Yeah, so I can see so many interesting comments are coming up, like Mitra said internet quality first, and then Helen says students using their mobile devices only. So yeah, digital divide is the new, way of saying nowadays. So many people mention about digital divide, that access that you have mentioned. All right, can we move on to our next question, Colleen?
No, because we've got to let the audience engage as well.
Oh,
a
okay.
reminder that if you'd like to speak out loud, you can raise your hand. And then Gunnar will be more than happy to call out your name and allow you to speak out loud. Or if you want to post a question or any kind of comment in the chat or share an experience, again, Gunnar will be more than happy to read that aloud for you as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Colleen. Yeah, I was just going to ask if anybody would like to add anything to what Alana mentioned. Have you had something similar or something totally different that you like to share with everyone? Because we are all in this together. I'm pretty sure everyone had some sort of an experience that would like to share. You can either write it in the chat box or you can raise your hand to share out loud, however you prefer, however you feel comfortable. Yeah, Mitra mentioned kids around, phone ringings, and kitchen stuff while the camera is off, audio is muted. The teachers do not know whether they are there or not. Very confusing, right? Good point, Mitra. Thank you. And Helen mentions validity with assessment online. Very good point. Absolutely. And Susan say unstable internet. That's for sure. It's a big issue. And Alana also mentions too nosy background. That happens quite often, right? Either kids are screaming or dog is barking or somebody closing the door, opening the door, could be anything, right? Anybody else would like to add? This is what we have so far in the chat. Like today, maybe I should share my own experience, what happened. Today was like, this week is the last week, so it's an exam week. One of my students had a terrible internet connection, so he found a solution by going to the mall, doing the test at the mall. Like, what am I gonna say? At least he find a solution to do it. Instead of getting big fat 0, he find a solution to do the test at the mall. I was like, okay, this never happened before, but it happens. So anything like this outrageous happens to you? This was first mine. I was just asking my colleagues, did you have this before? Somebody joined the exam at a mall? That was like something.
I have personally had students join into class from like Ubers or taxis.
Oh my God.
That is very distracting, obviously, when you're trying to teach a lesson. But yes, they join from all kinds of places now, and sometimes it's great because they're finding a workaround for, you know, obviously your student had a very, you know, bad internet connection or whatever the situation is, so he's found a workaround. But other times it can be very distracting.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That definitely, I heard that story before for sure. And Loretta mentions health problem because of sitting for too long hours. That is absolutely right. It hurts your neck, your shoulder, right? All that. Oh, somebody says my student did his test in a bar, so I'm glad I'm not alone. That's good. At a bar, nice. Can I have a glass of beer while I'm taking my test? What else? Husband's butting in, and assessment in a car. That is interesting. Her husband and the kids in the same car. And fostering encouragement to keep camera on. Yeah, that's a big issue. I was like, if I don't see you, I don't know you're in the classroom. Like, I have to write you present. If you want me to write you present, please show me your face. Very good point. I like that.
Maybe we might pose that question to Alana. Alana, do you have any suggestions for Deborah? You know, in your experience, do you find there's a certain way that you can foster community or encourage students to keep their cameras on? Is there a technique or anything?
This is a great question, and it's something that I've had to deal with myself. I am very lucky in that the various programs that I am involved in, it is a requirement that students do have their camera on. So we do have, you know, greater support. It's not just the teacher saying your camera has to be on. There is larger support. But that said, there is still sometimes pushback or resistance from students. And honestly, I think a lot of the times is literally just explaining to them why their camera needs to be on. So obviously for attendance purposes, but also thinking about the whole idea of language and the whole way that we communicate. So much of what we communicate is through our face, through our gestures, through our body language. And if we can't see that, it makes our communication just that much more difficult, and their language progress is gonna, you know, not go quite as quickly as maybe they want it to. And when I do have those conversations with students, 99% of the time they do come around. And I think it is also just getting them comfortable. Like, they are going to be uncomfortable at the beginning of a class. It's just kind of human nature, I think, to want to turn your camera off. But once they get into the habit of doing it, once they see their other classmates have their cameras on, in my experience, they're much more likely to get comfortable and to feel, you know, safe showing their faces on cameras. So it's just a habit. Although I do completely understand that sometimes it's a push. It's a push to get them to do it in the beginning.
Absolutely. Helen also mentions knowing the length of time for an assessment can be an issue. Anybody else would like to add anything else before we move on to the next question? Okay, I guess we're good to go to the next question.
All right, so next question is, how has COVID-19 affected the sense of community in your class or in your classes?
Yeah, so I would say that it's definitely changed the sense of community in my class. Again, I don't want to say it's better or it's worse, it's just different. Of course, we've already touched on a number of points that really affect the sense of community in the class. The fact that our students are literally physically distanced, the fact that sometimes they're reticent to turn on their cameras, the fact that they're shy sometimes, right? They're shy or things like this. So it has definitely changed it, but I really want to emphasize that you can still build community in an online class. It's definitely still possible. We as instructors, I'm sure, want it. Our students, they do want it. They are craving connection with other people. So they want it. And I think that if you really make an effort and you make it intentional to try to build community in your classes, if you try to make connections with other people, your students will respond to it. So I would say that there can be a gap, but if you're intentional about what you do and the activities that you do, I think that gap can really be closed. And there's a number, I think in some of the later questions, we'll talk about some strategies for how to do this. But like I said, I would just emphasize that it is possible to create good community, good community, not just online community. I think it's possible to create really good community in your classes. And I see it with my own students where they, they exchange phone numbers with each other, or they talk on, I teach many students in China, so they talk on WeChat. I even had one really heartwarming story where two students in China, but they were in very different cities in China, but they had kind of become friends online in Zoom. And there was this really lovely story that one weekend they took the train to meet each other and they spent the weekend together. And, it's lovely. Like, they are craving this. So.
Great. Mitra mentions in here, this engagement isolation fall apart behind conflicts emerge due to virtual communication. And Helen mentions changing from an in-person class to an online classroom is very difficult. Well, WhatsApp helps with the communication, someone mentions. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, Mitra says, even your face expression can be interpreted differently as well on the camera. And Deborah says, I feel it has actually strengthened the sense of community. They never wanted to leave the synchronous sessions. They even planned a get-together in a park, which we just had a week and a half ago, which is a good point for sure. Thank you for sharing that, Deborah. Yeah, anybody else would like? Alana, please.
No, I was just going to say that's really, really nice, Deborah. That,
it is.
Your students don't want to leave class and they want to meet and they want to be together. It just shows you that they are really craving that interaction.
They do. Yeah, definitely. That's a really good one. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing that. Anybody else would like to add anything else? Oh, Mitra mentioned something about WhatsApp use. It's strongly prohibited to use in our college due to private matters.
Yeah, I would just jump in there that maybe like in terms of the more formal classroom, I understand that there's a lot of issues around privacy and things there, but between themselves, I would definitely encourage you to have them share their contact information in a way that they feel comfortable sharing.
That's actually a good point. Definitely, students can do that as long as teacher is not part of it. Nihat mentions, I feel my students are closer now and are helping each other more. It's great to know. And Lana, my class actually enjoys Zoom because they could see each other's face and names. It becomes exciting for some people, right? That's great.
Yeah, I want to say something like what I have seen, if the students knew from each other, like knew from before, then online works well. But if they're completely new to one another, then it's difficult to find a community. So what do you think? I found that in my class. Right. So what do you think, Alana, or anyone?
Yeah, well, so there's I think in later questions there's specific questions that kind of touch on this point about specific strategies to develop community. I think it's really important to encourage that community, to encourage them to make friends, to go into breakout rooms, and to give them time to just chat with each other, right? It doesn't have to be all business all the time. You know, sometimes they really do just want to talk to each other, ask each other some questions, find out, you know, about who they are and who they're spending every day of the week on Zoom with, and really allowing them that time. And I think, you know, if you give them that time, then it does kind of flow naturally from there. There are all kinds of different activities that you can do to encourage community as well. But I think that's coming in a little bit of a later question. So we can get more specific there. But I think really just like making the time to let them connect with each other, whether it be for 10 minutes at the beginning of class to just pop into a breakout room and chat about the weekend or, you know, some hobbies or interests. I think that's a good step to get the community build.
That's for sure. Huda was mentioning also students setting up Zoom classes among themselves after classes to connect more because of COVID restrictions, which is very good. Like they create their own Zoom meeting, which is awesome. I wasn't aware of that. And Helen mentions the connection in my class helps when they have similar interests and same culture. That's a very good point. Absolutely. Same interest, same culture, it helps. Nihat mentions that they help each other. Whoever has more experience than the other, definitely. And Huda also mentions many of the students were more comfortable with Zoom because not all want to share their personal numbers too. Yeah, Helen also mentions breakout rooms actually very helpful. So as you're going to experience yourself as well, if you haven't, like end of this session, we do have breakout room activity, which is one of my favorite. I feel like I'm more connected. I have more personal time with the people. So it just brings a different, you know, atmosphere to the classroom environment. And Susan mentions, yes, I agree about breakout rooms, just frustrating if someone is struggling with connectivity. Absolutely. Right? Internet connection again, if they don't really have the good connection or internet is very spotty and it might take a while to do that breakout rooms. Anybody else would like to share their experience? Oh, Deborah is asking, does anyone have Google Classroom Enterprise which provides the breakout rooms that helps with the setup and connection? Oh, I didn't know that. Anybody?
No, I've never used that. No.
Me either. Deborah, would you like to share with us? If you feel comfortable.
Hi, yes. So Google Classroom, like basic, does not have breakout rooms built in it, right? But if you buy Enterprise, and I think it's $6 and so a teacher. And so I'm hoping our board will purchase that. I asked them last year to do it twice. And so right now, most teachers are doing like a bunch of apps that they showed us. And like, you're robbing Paul to pay Peter and trying to put people in, and it's very, very, very confusing for the instructor and also the students. So I'm hoping, and so I didn't know if any of you had, work for anybody who has enterprise. Again, it's a few dollars, it's like an upgrade, right? And so we're going to be online again this year coming. We were fully online last year. So I'm hoping that they'll purchase that for our group. So I didn't know if you guys have it and you think it's worth the money, and you can't purchase it individually either. So that's a problem.
Thank you, Deborah. That was very nice to hear that part of it, because I wasn't aware of that at all. That was a great info. Oh, Huda mentions Ottawa Carleton District School Board are using it. That's good. Alana mentions, I believe you need to set up a Google Meet through a calendar and then assign the groups. Is that right? Helen mentions, I heard of Enterprise, but I haven't used it. So mostly it's being used Zoom and LMS and Venue. All right, great, perfect. Anybody else would you like to add before we move on to the next question? Perfect. Let's move on, Imre.
All right, very good discussion going on. So thank you, Alana, and everybody who joined us today. So our next question today is, why are language learning classrooms a useful space to practice and teach about issues of social inclusion? Yeah, so it's a very, very important topic, I guess, especially in Canada. Social inclusion. Yeah, over to you, Alana.
Yes. Social inclusion. As you said, it's a very, very important topic. I mean, I think it's always been an important topic, but it's really been brought to the forefront with all kinds of things. I mean, you just have to turn on the news for 10 minutes to see about how, issues of social inclusion are becoming more and more at the forefront of people's minds. So I actually have a little definition here of social inclusion from the United Nations that maybe I'll share with you, and then I can speak a little bit about it. So the UN defines it as the process of improving the terms of participation in society, particularly for people who are disadvantaged, through enhancing opportunities, access to resources, voices, and respect for rights. So I think it's really important to there's kind of multiple ways to speak about this, but it's really important to make sure that our students, who are sometimes at a disadvantage because they are ELLs, they are generally new to a culture, they're learning a new culture. It is really important to make sure that they do feel included in our society, so that they do have advantages, so that they are able to, connect and be successful in Canadian society, or wherever it is ultimately that they are, or they choose to work, live, study. And we know that meaningful interactions in classrooms with instructors and with students results in better learning outcomes. So when our students feel included, when they feel like they are part of the class, when they feel like they are accepted and valued members of a learning environment, they are going to make better progress with their studies, with their language learning, with all of these kinds of things. It's also a really very, ESL classrooms are a very natural place, I think, to teach about and learn about issues of social inclusion and diversity, because our students, they want to learn these things. Often they are really very interested in discussions of culture and things like this. And our classrooms should be a very safe place for students to ask these questions that they have, for students to make mistakes and be gently corrected, to ask each other questions that might not necessarily be appropriate, or appropriate in other situations. So our classroom should be these very safe places where students can learn these things. And it's just so important, I think. I think that we, as ESL instructors and probably as teachers, more generally, I think really that we have a very big responsibility to teach about social inclusion, what that means, why it's important, and how we can encourage more social inclusion in the societies that we live in. Oh, Gonal, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Alana. Thank you again. And I would like to open the floor for the audience to start talking and perhaps tell us your point of view or what you think. And we have Mitra mentions language and culture are interwoven and can't be separated from each other. I think that's a very good point. Definitely, you cannot separate them. You can also write your question in the chat box if you have any, or your personal experience you would like to share. Helen says, I find that students are more open and willing to have the difficult questions when they are online as opposed to in-person classroom. It's safe, I guess.
That's an interesting point.
It is, yeah. Maybe because they are at home.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Nearpod says, inclusion fosters a sense of belonging, which is important to integrate. Absolutely, for sure.
Gunnar, I have my hand up. Can I ask Alana a question?
Absolutely, please. I didn't see it. My eyes are in the chat. I was like,
I know.
okay.
I've been there. So Alana, when I think of social inclusion inside the classroom, I think about how awesome breakout rooms can be, especially for things like partner work and for switching students up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes in the classroom, we find certain groups of students stick together, but through use of breakout rooms or any kind of other online activity that we're able to mix students up in ways that maybe they would not have before. Have you noticed this before? Do you utilize it to your advantage? How do you find it helps?
Yeah. I have noticed this, and I think it's great because every time you make a breakout room, of course you can pick and choose who goes in the room, or it's just totally random, and then it's a surprise when they arrive to the breakout room. And it's great. It's great. I think students like it because they are, in a way forced to interact with people from different cultural backgrounds or different languages or different ages. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. They are ultimately connecting with each other. And like I said, if there is these safe connections kind of between them, then they're comfortable to ask these questions to somebody. So yeah, I think breakout rooms are just wonderful. They're like my magic power in class every day. and students, I think the students really do enjoy them as well.
I totally agree, Elena, because recently one of my students was a teacher, I want to stay in that breakout room a little longer. I was like, why? Because we have a lot to share. Can we just talk a little bit more? So they literally asking for more. So that's the feedback I'm receiving. I was like, okay, there is some sort of a magic going on in these breakout rooms.
Yes, I had to actually go into my Zoom and change the setting on the close time for the breakout rooms, because you know how it's just automatically set to 1 minute?
Yeah.
And then they're forced back to the main room. Well, they were every single time they were staying for the whole minute, and it would eat up a lot of class time. So I had to change the time to, I think I changed it to 25 seconds or something, and then they're forced back. but like that's a good thing, right? That they want to stay in the breakout rooms with each other.
Absolutely. You ended up learning what they really enjoy the most. It helps them as well. I use MS and MS Teams, so it doesn't really give, it's just totally up to me when to close the breakout rooms, and they get few second reminder saying that it will be done in 10 seconds or something, so that they know, which is a little advantage, I guess.
Yeah.
Anybody else would like to talk about the breakout rooms? Any experience they may have, would like to share, maybe different? Okay, we have 3 more minutes if you'd like to add something before we move on. All good? Okay, I guess I didn't miss. No hands, no chat is good. Perfect. Okay, Meg, can we please move on to the next question?
Yeah, so these are conversation questions. All right, so what effects does a strong sense of community have on the language learning process? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that we've kind of touched on some of this already in the previous question, but I think ultimately, like, language learning, really any kind of learning, involves risk taking. And if students don't feel safe, if they don't feel comfortable with the people that they're with or the instructors that they're with, they're not going to take those risks. They're not going to try the new language. They're not going to try the new grammar. They're going to be, reticent in their writing to, try out new structures and things like this. So really making sure that they feel comfortable, making sure that students feel comfortable with who they're with will encourage them to take risks. And ultimately taking risks will lead to, better learning outcomes. And, it will also just make the process more enjoyable, right? It's important for us to enjoy our learning. That doesn't mean that it has to be fun all the time, but, if you're having a pleasant experience on a Zoom call with your teacher and your instructors, well, that's just going to be better for everything, right? You're going to have a better attitude towards the class, a better attitude towards learning. You're going to enjoy English more. You're going to be more likely to use it. It's going to have positive effects on your mental health, which obviously is another big conversation that we could have these days with, all of the social isolation that's happening. So yeah, I think, it's going to encourage risk taking. It's going to make people feel better.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alana. That was very nicely explained. So Mitra mentioned sense of community in class means trying to achieve the goals, better outcomes, more collaboration, positive attitudes, and more engagement. Those are very good points. Thank you for sharing those, Mitra.
I like the point about a positive attitude, because I really think that can make all
absolutely. Yeah, she mentioned all the key points in here. I really like this, definitely. Anybody else would like to share? Sense of community means taking risk. So important in language learning. Absolutely. Thank you, Colin. I would say that's nice. Ebony has a big blue button, but it doesn't always work. There are still a few glitches to it. It happens, right?
Can I just say I worked with Big Blue Button for webinars for like a year, and it is one of the most unreliable video conferencing softwares out there. So Helen, I feel your pain. It's not fun all the time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your input, Colin. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that because I didn't use it, so I wasn't really sure. Anybody else would like to add anything else? If you may have any question for our subject expert, Mary. Yes, in order to create community, we need risk, right? Almost everything in our life, we have to take risk to do something. So we all, without taking risk, many of us cannot really reach any of the goals that we may have in our life. And that is truly important for the, language learning. They take risks to come to Canada. They take risks to learn the language. They take risks to bring their families here, start a new life, everything. Okay, let's see, anybody else? Yes, confidence is the key. More sense of community can be built. And sense of belonging in the classroom too. Motivation, Colin mentioned motivation to communicate with others also comes to mind. If I want to get to know my classmates, I will have to participate speaking and writing and listening and reading, absolutely. Or as instructors, we can also create some sort of an assignment to make students connect. Like recently, I have a lower level students. I will say it's not beginner, but pre-intermediate maybe. So I did kind of an assignment about interviewing the classmate, get to know the classmate a little bit more, and present to the class because it's a speaking class. So they have to do this outside of the class, get together. And then after that, present the whole class. So that way the person gets to know the partner really well and introduce the classroom environment too is another bonus. So become a small community, small family, right, at the Zoom, right? So which is perfect. Is there anything like that you do in your classroom? Try to help to create that community, like breakout rooms, assignments, creating the autonomy. Yeah, Helen's agree. Thank you, Helen. Presentations are very good, especially for speaking, because that's the part. They are not out there. They can't really go many places or hang out in the school. They don't really have anybody to talk. So presentation definitely helps. Icebreakers, yes, thank you, Colin. That will be very helpful. Beginning of the term or each class that you are studying before you start, you can start your class with the icebreaker. Awesome. Anything else? Good tips are coming. I like it. You can use some of these for sure. Any interactive work using Google Docs helps? Absolutely. I use Google Doc. Very helpful because everybody can go and type whatever they like. Collaboration. Perfect. You're doing it very well. Would you like to add anything else? Very good. We can move on. Oh, before we start, it says, Nikat say, my students love to practice dialogues, which I prepare for them. Oh, thank you. That's a good one for sure. Absolutely. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So our next conversation question is, what are some general strategies to promote social inclusion in classes? Yeah, as language teacher, we always have to come up with strategies. Yeah. So what are some general strategies we can find out tonight to promote inclusion in classes? So over to you, Alana, first, and then everyone.
Yeah, sure. So I think, first and foremost, it's important to make sure that all of your students' voices are heard, so that we're giving opportunities to everybody in your class equally, and that you're showing that their voices are valued. I also think it's really important at the beginning of any class to teach a little bit about netiquette. So netiquette meaning online etiquette. What is acceptable and not acceptable in online spaces, because our students don't always know this. So it's really important to be very explicit, really at the beginning of any class, to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what's acceptable and not acceptable. I actually recently found this diagram. I think it was from the University of, sorry, it was Memorial University. So if you go online and do a little search, they had this really nice diagram about, I think it was like 8 or 9 different elements of netiquette. And of course, there's some, like be respectful of people's time, and don't, cause arguments or, conflict online. But the one that really stuck out for me is to remember the human. To remember that there's always somebody behind the screen, a real person, right, with real feelings, real ideas, real thoughts. I think it's so easy sometimes to just, type something online and hit enter and not really think about what you're saying and not really think about the impact of your words. So that was on this little diagram that I'm speaking about, that one really stuck out to me, that always remember that there's somebody on the other side of that screen and that your words are being heard, they're being taken in, they're being felt by somebody. So always remember the human. A couple other things that might be important to think about when we think about social inclusion, especially maybe on Zoom or in video calls like this, is to you could beside your name, you can put your gender pronouns as a way to show students that we're in an inclusive environment and that all people, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, or what be it, you know, they're welcome and they're accepted here. You could teach, if your students aren't familiar with this practice, you can have a little lesson around that, why this might be a good or helpful thing to do. You can encourage them to do that. Also, sometimes if you have your camera on, it might be important to consider your background and thinking about where you are and what your background says about you. And you know what that projects to the students that are in your class, what it can tell about whether it be your socioeconomic status or that of your students, right? Not just about the instructor, thinking about it from the student perspective as well. So being a little aware of these kinds of things. Obviously making sure, and I'm sure as language teachers, you naturally do this, making sure that you're calling students by the name that they want to be called by, whether they have a preferred name, if they have a name, if they don't have a preferred English name and they prefer to use their name, whether it be in Korean or Mandarin or whatever it is, properly learn how to pronounce that name so that they feel like you and the other students in the class have taken some time to really learn their names and that you value who they are. You know, these are all just really small, little simple things that you can do, but I think they can have a really big impact on helping people feel really welcome. And the other point that I might make here, and I think I might have already touched on this a little bit, is to encourage chit chat. Chit chat is a good thing, right? Take 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of class, ask your students about their weekend, ask them how their part-time job is going. If you see, the dog walk in the back, ask about the dog. How's the dog? What's the dog's name? Students really value this because it's really like, oh, my teacher noticed me. She noticed I'm here. My teacher's actually interested in me. She wants to know a little bit more about my life. And, the vast majority of times they are so happy to introduce you to their cats and their dogs and their children and husbands or, whoever happens to be around. And it really makes them feel welcome, really makes them feel noticed and welcome, even in, through a screen. So these were maybe some of my initial thoughts to respond to this question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alana. Those were wonderful points that you made and make all of us think about it. And I'm just wondering if anybody would like to would like to talk. You can either raise your hand, put your question in the chat box or your comments. I will try my best to read it, whatever comes through. So Mitra says, set the classroom rules together with our students, the very first session, and follow them strictly. Sometimes we need to remind and review them. This means hearing all the voices and everyone feels that they are being heard and respected. Excellent point, Mitra. Thank you for sharing those. I totally agree. I personally create my classroom rules with my students, so they feel like we are just doing it together, like we are a community, we are just like connected. So they feel like, okay, we created as a whole class, we are going to follow the rules. So they follow the rules a lot better if we create it all as a whole class. Great, Helen. Helen says, at times students forget their microphone is on and the camera is on. I've had students have conversation with their kids or spouses. I had one student forget to put his shirt on. Oh, wow, Helen, you have different experiences. Holy, very. Some of them is quite common. Some of them I never heard before. Thank you for sharing with us for sure. Virtual environment, right? Anything can happen. Oh, Alana, I agree with Helen for sure. Anything else? Yes, Helen, please educate us. You seem like have a lot of going on. And Deborah says, yes, the graphic from Memorial University can be found at blog.citl.mun.ca. And if that doesn't work, just Google the university and search. So write in the chat so you can copy that if you like. And Nika says, adding to what Alana said, it is important to remember their names and not forget them. Ask them again and again. Absolutely. right? Referring to someone with their names is very important. We are kind of lucky, either Zoom or the Microsoft team that we use, their names always present, which is very nice. So less work for the instructors, but definitely referring to them with their names. And Colin has a question for Alana. In your experience, do you find the way you're dressed or speak sets an example? Do you tend to use a certain style depending on your students? That's a very good question, Colin. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a really great question.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. And I would say, yes, definitely. I think that if you as the instructor show up and you show that you're present and that you're being professional and you're dressed appropriately and you're in an appropriate space, that your students are going to follow along with that, right? Obviously, if the instructor shows up in I mean, I know we've all gotten a little more casual maybe with our dress during the pandemic, but, you know, making sure that you do present yourself, pajamas maybe called, making sure that you are trying to present yourself professionally, but casual and approachable, right? Obviously, this is obviously very important with instructors, making sure that you are professional so that, you know, students are obviously taking you seriously, taking your class seriously, that they're seeing value in what you're doing. Because they're spending a lot of time themselves, right? Connecting. Sometimes they're spending a lot of money to attend your classes. So of course, making sure that you're professional, but approachable. And then of course, in terms of the way that you speak, you know, making sure that you're friendly. You know, students don't respond well when, you know, it's overly serious or, you know, stoic or something like this, right? You have to show, it's really important to show your personality. Even on Zoom, I think it's important to show your personality, make jokes, yeah, as appropriate, obviously, you know, but make jokes, engage, smile. I think, you know, smile is a universal symbol. So I think you should make use of it as much as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alana. That was very wonderful. Definitely. I totally agree. Smile is the universal key. And setting yourself up as a, you know, you're presenting yourself is extremely important to your students because you're guiding them and you are the main person they're going to follow. So how they see you, they will be acting that way too. If they look that you're professional, you're there on time, and you're doing what you need to do, and they tend to copy their teachers because they admire you, they want to be like you. So, and they want you to like them too. So what do? You just follow what teachers do, right? Perfect. And we have, oh, actually, let me see. You mentioned, you know, sometimes there are cultural biases, especially when we form group or in group work. Absolutely, that's a very good point. So how do you address those in class? If you see, Alana, that's actually for you or anybody.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of explicitly talking about them. I was looking at the chat and kind of smiling and giggling because I've had some similar experiences as what you're describing with students, maybe not being appropriately dressed or attending class from bed or you know, smoking and blowing the smoke into the camera, so you know the Zoom box fills with smoke. So you know, we've all had these awkward situations or situations that wouldn't be appropriate for a class setting, and I think it's really just a matter of just explicitly you know, obviously talking about it at the beginning of class, but revisiting these again and again as needed, and just explicitly telling them this is not appropriate for a learning environment. I realize you are in your home, but we are still part of, you know, a whole group. And this action might be making other people on the call feel uncomfortable, and just being mindful that, that, you know, other people might not be happy to see you without a shirt on, or, you know, see you in a room in your house that's, you know, I don't know, a private room. Just being really explicit about it. And I think students really do come around, and yeah, if you have these open conversations, they get it. They get it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alana. Mitra mentions, but again, it is a matter of personal taste and the values. Some students don't care about their outfit or appearance. Some others do. And again, Mitra mentions, yes, I had one e-cigarette, and when I reminded him about the rules, he said, oh, I thought I can because I'm not in real classroom. Like e-cigarette smoking. That's different. I never had that before. Colin mentions, I learned from a teacher when I taught Link. Every Monday, she used to ask her student what they did on the weekend. The student used to fight the answer first and to share their exciting stories. Is positive. Very good, actually. Yeah, that's a very good point, to sincerely asking and interested about their weekend, what they did. That helps for sure, because it's personal, right? They have a lot to share. What did they do? And Nihat mentions, I have requested my students to dress as they would for the class. Very nice. Helen mentioned, wow, Mitra, that's disappointing. Elena, I try to start or end my class lessons with some motivational quote, and we discuss it. That's a very nice one. Very good. I like that. I might try that, Elena. Thank you. Mitra says, yes, Helen, online teaching and witnessing new scenarios. Yeah, I think once this online teaching thing is finished, hopefully, I think we're all gonna have extraordinary stories to share. We can even write a book about all this, right? You know how when a woman gets pregnant, they have a lot of stories to tell. And when man goes to the army and come back, they have a lot to say. This is gonna be something like that. That's how I see it. Okay, we're doing awesome, very hot conversation going on, but we're gonna move on. Over to you, Imme.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Yeah, so our next question is, what are some community building activities for synchronous classes? Yeah.
So I mean, there's so many tools, so many digital tools that are available to us now, and we've already mentioned some of them, but some of my kind of favorite ones to use during class. Well, I mean, obviously Zoom, and taking advantage of all of the features of Zoom. I personally use Zoom for my classes, so taking advantage of the features of Zoom. So using the breakout rooms, encouraging your students to use the chat, using the poll function of Zoom. But as well as other tools. Where I work, we do have an LMS. So we use the LMS. That's maybe not the best for synchronous activities. It might be better designed for asynchronous activities. But using some of these collaborative platforms that we've already touched on. So whether it be Google Docs, where our students can write together, and then you can provide them with kind of live real-time feedback. Padlet is a great place where students, can put their ideas and they can represent it with text or images. They can even do recordings and then respond to each other. Another tool that I really like, and if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend that you check it out, is called Nearpod. Nearpod is an amazing tool for creating interactive lessons. So it has collaboration boards, it has you can build in vocabulary activities. You can have students do like little drawings. So you could do a little kind of Pictionary kind of thing. It makes the class really, really interactive. And I personally really like Nearpod. Google Jamboard is another one. So again, another collaboration board. It's also great, as I kind of mentioned before, for, these synchronous classes, is just chatting, embracing the distractions that are around them, obviously within reason. But these are great ways to build that community. And so I'd love to hear if you have any other tools that you like to use for synchronous activities.
Awesome, Alana. Yes, the floor is open to everybody who would like to participate. You can raise your hand or put your question in the chat box here, or comment, whatever you may like. We have great comments coming in. So Colleen mentions, my friend Patrick taught me about Peer Deck. It's awesome with Google Sites. Ooh, I'd like to know a little bit more about that, Colin. That sounds pretty interesting. Yeah, Elena says you mentioned all that. Peer Deck. I never use. Yeah, me either. Colin, you might tell us a little bit more about this, if that's okay.
I can tell you, but Patrick's the expert on it. So Patrick, if you're watching this recording later on, you're gonna have to do a little video or tutorial for us someday.
Nice.
But basically, Peer Deck is really cool. So if you have a Google Slide, you can make the Peer Deck work along with it. So you would give the audience the link for the Peer Deck, and while you're going through your presentation, when you change the slides, it also changes on their device. And they can do things like they can do polls on it, that you can ask reflection questions they can answer, and then you can choose questions to share that everyone can see. It's just a really fun way to get everyone involved, and it makes it interactive without having to be too complicated, because I think that's a lot of the issues that we have sometimes. With certain levels, you find that some learners can deal with more complex things, and some learners it's just too much. So I think Peer Deck is a nice way to balance it out. Like, it looks like Google Slides, but you get to do all these fun things in it. So I love Peer Deck. But again, Patrick, if you're watching this later on, please make us a video. We need your help. Thank you.
Yes, definitely, Patrick. We need a video. How about exchange video? Love to have you there. I think that will be a hot topic for sure. I'm going to bother him after a dialogue session. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we have. Some of our audiences mentioning about use Quizlet. I personally use Quizlet. It's very, very helpful. And Kahoot is another favorite. Emma mentioned. So do you think the 1 or 2 tools are okay, or we should try as many as possible, like one day Padlet and the other day Mentimeter? What do you think about that, Elena? Would you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would probably say that learning tools takes time. And, you know, students are already dealing with so much other learning, hopefully, that I would say generally to pick a few tools at the beginning of a course and give your students some time to learn and you know, use them consistently, just to, you know, save you time as the instructor, save them kind of that cognitive load of having to learn a new tool every time. I mean, if it's something quick and simple, you know, like the word clouds on Mentimeter are really simple and easy to navigate, so that would, you know, be very easy to incorporate for 5 minutes at the beginning of class. But if it's a tool that you're going to use more consistently, I would probably say pick a few, get familiar with it yourself, let your students get familiar with it. It'll probably make everything a little bit smoother. But that said, I mean, don't be nervous about trying new tools. I think it's fun, and you know, students like to learn new tools. It's kind of novel, it's fun, it's enjoyable. But you know, just be mindful of the time that it requires and some of that extra effort.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Elena. I think it's very important. And the level that you're teaching as well. If it's lower level, maybe not too many of them, because they might not keep up with the technology. But if it's a higher level, maybe it's manageable. But definitely, that's very good. Let's see what I have in here. Yeah, Elena mentioned I didn't want to swamp my learners with too many apps. Absolutely, I totally agree, because they can all, you know, they can get overwhelmed with that. Absolutely. Yeah, Colin mentions maybe the answer to this question can be as simple as encouraging partner and group work, right? Put them in the breakout rooms, or using the tools that either Zoom or the MS that offers, that comes with it, that they are already familiar with. Yeah, Elena also mentions, I think the teacher needs to be comfortable with the app and tool, then easier to explain to students how to use it. Helen mentioned it's exhausting for me to learn all these tools. Absolutely, Helen, yeah. I totally agree, very tough one. I think we should not be using a lot, that's for sure. Just a few, as Elena mentioned earlier, that then you can interchangeably use throughout the term. Anybody else? Okay, perfect. We are doing great. Emoji can. Nobody else? Okay, no hands up, no chat. Perfect. Over to you, Yume, for next question, please.
Yeah, so we talked about synchronous learning so far, and now specifically about asynchronous learning context. What are some community building activities for asynchronous learning context? And I think it's pretty much more challenging than the synchronous. So what do you think, Alana?
Yeah, it is. It's different than the synchronous components of your class. But I think it's still important to try to create spaces, outside of class time. So some things that I've done in the past that have been really successful are in Padlet, and it's just creating a space in Padlet that students can kind of access, anytime throughout the term, where they are encouraged to just upload pictures. And this was something that was really successful with my students, actually. So I would, encourage them to upload pictures of just, their life. And they did, and they would upload pictures of their weekend. They'd upload pictures of, a little adventure that they went on. They'd upload pictures of their family. They'd upload pictures of, well, when I did this, it was around Lunar New Year. So we got lots of pictures of their New Year's celebrations. And it's nice. And you can just, take a couple minutes and go and have a look at your classmates' pictures. And it gives the students a lot of control also over what they want to share, because they can choose what they want to share or maybe what they don't want to share. So that's really nice. Another tool that I use is Flipgrid. Flipgrid is great for recording audio or video. So, you can assign students a little recording that they have to make as part of their homework or as part of their asynchronous class time. And they can go into Flipgrid and create, a 2-minute video or whatever it is. And it's kind of fun because the timer counts down. So there's a little bit of pressure for them to get it done within the time. So that's kind of nice. Also, if you have an LMS or you have access to an LMS, there's, at least in the one that I use, Brightspace, there's options to leave video notes or audio notes. So this is a really nice way also to communicate. And I think, kind of going back to that camera issue that we talked about at the beginning, it's really nice when you can see people's faces to know that there really is a person who's, watching your videos and listening to your audios or whatever it is. So encouraging the audios and videos. And also, as was already mentioned, group projects, making sure that, or, trying to develop some kind of group project that students can complete together outside of class time. But of course, making sure that they have the tools to be able to do this, whether, communication tools or other online digital tools. But it's really nice if they're able to connect with each other a little bit outside of class, outside of that synchronous time, and trying to build, purposefully build that into your curriculum wherever possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elena, again. Over to you. Anybody would like to comment or ask question to Elena? Okay, I have Mitra's discussion board, wiki, Padlet, reflections, depending on what LMS we are using, we can plan the synchronous activities according to those tools. And Helen messaged in the LMS that I use, there is a forum which is similar to Chat, and they can write stories, upload pictures. It's a great, and they can also record video and audio. That's awesome, Helen. I didn't know LMS has that. That's great. So Huda mentions, I agree with the Padlet as well. And they are great for synchronous activities. Absolutely. I personally use Padlet. It's very helpful. You can add many things to it. You can add videos, voice recording, everything.
It was also just came to my mind as I was looking at the chat, the forums, the discussion boards are always an option as well. I think maybe we want to, like, they're great, they're a wonderful option, but be careful that it doesn't just become like a make work project, because students do see through that and it becomes tedious when it's always just make a post and respond to 2 others. Just be mindful that you're not being repetitive or boring, because students will catch on, and then the activity loses the whole meaning. And I think it's also important in those discussion forums that the instructor is present, but not too present, right? You want to also give them a chance between themselves to, be responding to each other without feeling like the instructor's, watching over every single thing that I post. So giving them a little bit of freedom and space in those discussion forums to talk amongst themselves.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much again. Okay. I think it's a good idea to move on so that we have lots of time for the breakout rooms. That's my favorite part. So Umme, over to you. And then I will take care of the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I think we don't have any more questions. So we have to set now the breakout room questions.
Okay, can you move on to
So yeah. So is the team ready?
Okay,
So
yes, I'm gonna open all the rooms as soon as you
Wait. Umi, can you just read the breakout room question out loud first?
Yeah. So in breakout rooms, please share some activities you have done with your students to promote a sense of community and belonging. So what we have done to promote sense of community and belonging. So that's our topic for breakout room.
Okay, they're coming back. Welcome back, everybody.
Why did you ask us to get back, to the meeting? We had conversations. Oh my God.
I hate that too personally, and I truly understand from both.
That was actually the point.
Oh,
That was actually the point that we discussed, that always the students like, to be in the breakout room. So the same thing happened to us, the two teachers. Very passionate, continuing talking, but then we had to get back. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay.
Anyway, because we are just so curious what's happening in those rooms. Can you please share with us now? Okay, since Mitra, I distracted your breakout room conversation. Would you like to start first?
Oh my God, me and Helen, actually, we're together. So Helen is teaching, at TDSP link level. So, the ones who are teaching, at link.
Okay.
And my major and my specialty is teaching, at college. So we are teaching, two different, let's say, levels. But the way that, Helen tries to engage, the students in link, that's, something that she mentioned, that always she let the students to get, the topic that they are really interested in discussing. For example, a group of women, they are interested, in cooking. So they like, to share their cooking recipes, right? Or another group, interested in other spots. So these are, the things that we just got to talk together with Helen. And Helen, if you want, you can add more.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mitra. Well, because with Link TDSB, it's PBLA based, so which is the portfolio based assessment. So it's all about needs assessment. So, I just go with whatever the students like to talk about or write about, or whatever theme and topic they would like. And that's the focus. And then I would incorporate the listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So, and it's all about them. I mean, we're there to help our students. We're language teachers, and that's our focus. That's what we want to do. That's the goal, to help them learn, and then they can go off in the real world and be successful.
Awesome. So, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, let's move on to room 3. We have Colleen, Deborah, Nika, or Shaharira. Anybody would like to share what happened in that room? Please, we'd like to know.
Perhaps Deborah, you can share.
Sure.
Deborah, are you going to be saying something? Hi.
Hello.
Because okay, Deborah, so Deborah had the most experience about online learning. Okay, for myself, I've been telling my group that, I wasn't very lucky to work during the pandemic time, since, I was I did something else. I shifted into a bit from ESL for the time being. So I'm doing assistive technology for learning for students with learning disabilities, which is more or less something related to technology and also to reading and writing. But then Deborah has more experience about the different tools that she's been using during the pandemic, and also Nikat. Go ahead, Deborah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so what I had shared was when I went into, well, when the pandemic first started, of course, everything I did in the classroom virtually, I just said, okay, what would I do in my regular classroom? You know, and I just went with that, because really sometimes we try to make it so different, but it really doesn't always have to be. So one of the things I mentioned for community was something I call bring and brag. I've been doing it for like over 20 years, and it's show and tell basically, but I thought there's no reason we can't do that virtually, right? They just show us on the screen, and actually people are even more open with what they end up sharing, and they just love it, you know. So for community, that's my biggest community builder. And of course it's speaking practice and so on. As far as tech-wise, like building that in over time, Padlet I've used throughout the school year, asynchronously, like let's say greeting cards, you know, around the holidays, different holidays, all throughout the whole school year. So I would just set a Padlet up, and they would put their greeting on to each other, and it was like a virtual card to each other, you know. So that created some community as well. And there are always a handful that aren't interested, you know, they don't want to. But, you know, eventually they kind of come around, you know, how that, even in the classroom, right? So really everything's kind of the same. Padlet Jamboard, I use that a lot because, again, we're in Google Classroom. So it's a Google product. It's fantastic. It takes, you know, most students know more technology than I do. So they pick up on it. I teach level 7, 6 and 7. So their English is very high. It takes me 5-10 minutes and everybody's on board. But they like that. They can post things. They move it around. It's like they're adults, but, you know, being in class on the computer every day, it's nice to do some, you know, move things around and participate just like they would in the classroom. What are some other, what else did I mention, guys? I'm trying to remember. I don't know, off the top of my head, some icebreakers, of course. You know, I'm always looking for good virtual ones. And you can just Google, there's 8 million of them online, honestly. Like you could, depending on your level, you could Google that and go about that. What are some of the other things? I had never heard of Nearpod, so I'm going to be checking that one out. And I agree. I would say 2 of those kinds of, I have used Kahoot because that's more like questions, and they love the competition, most of them. So I use Kahoot for, you know, instead of the community building, but it's a different type of community building where it's like, I got you, you know, I knew the answer quicker this time. So there's, you know, depending on how well they know each other, you're not going to do that in the first week or something, but you know, after a few weeks and they're more comfortable with each other and have that more confidence, you know, then they could do that. Yeah, I had not heard of Pear Deck or Nearpod, so I'm going to be checking those two out, but I would probably only choose like one of those as something new, right? For some of my students that are returning from last school year. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. That was very nice. We had a lot to share. So we have only a few minutes left. Actually, we're almost done. What would you like to share Alana's contact information before I close? Okay, everybody, this is Alana's contact information. If you happen to have any question what we did today that you didn't get a chance to ask, or you didn't put it in the chat box, feel free to contact her with her work email or through LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure she'll be more than happy to help you out any question you may have for her.